Yeah, I would say that we're late, but in Kaiser Standard Time, there is in fact no such thing. There is no such thing. There is a such thing, however, as a wrinkly shirt. What the heck's going on? It is Friday, June 17th. What an amazing day it is to be alive. You are watching right now PaleocratDiaries. Super, super psyched. And you know what? You're not just watching PaleocratDiaries. You're watching PaleocratDiaries on Paleocrat's YouTube channel. And not just regular PaleocratDiaries. You're watching the Wonder Twins, right? With their amazing rings slamming together, right? Bringing you kind of a megazord of what we've got to offer here at the Apostolate. Whom I'm talking about? I'll tell you who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jay Fowler. We're going to bring him in just a moment. But before we do, we got to do, in fact, what we always do. We've got to dream bigger thoughts. We've got to conform all those thoughts and words and deeds to Christ the King. We do that by taking a knee. We do that by this commitment deep down inside, this burning desire to say no matter how bad it gets, no matter how wicked it gets in this world, and it is wicked, it's terribly, terribly bad, tumultuous times, that we will never give up, that we're going to keep on smiling, and we're going to remember we're going to die. We're going to die! So what do? You and I, man, just straight pedal to the metal, boys and girls. No more shame, no more fear, no more hiding that light under a bushel. Oh no, it shall not happen anymore. Not with us. And one of the ways we do that, you gotta go to the Wolfpack chat. Straight up, son. Straight up, sister. Make sure to go over right now. Well, you can wait a moment. Wait till all the people making fun for how late we are, they're in bed. Because we can delete all those comments. Say, we were never late. I don't know what you're talking about. Have no clue what you're talking about. You got to go over there. Link in the description below. Ugh, man. Well, look, we have to ask you before I bring in Jake, before I bring him in, we have to just ask that if there is any audio issue, because anyone who knows me knows I'm a professional, but not with audio. With audio, boy, oh boy, is it bad. And I'm sitting there and we're streaming through StreamYard. And anyone who knows me knows I hate StreamYard. I loathe StreamYard. And so we're going through it though, and there's a delay. And I set everything up on OBS like normal, and then I realized at the last second, oh my goodness gracious, alive, there's an audio delay. So we had to figure it out. I don't know how it's going to go through. It's a lesson learned, but we figured it's kind of chillax. It's kind of chillax tonight. And so we decided we're just going to get together. Check it out. And there he is. Yeah. What's up, homie? Yeah.
Boom.
Not much.
What's going on, man?
Oh.
It's good to be here. My goodness. That wrinkly shirt coming. I thought you were talking
You don't
about
have any
me.
wrinkly shirt. What you talking about? Yeah.
No, there are no wrinkles in this house whatsoever. Everything's pressed clean, sharp. That's right. But I tell you what isn't all right is this is like half a martini worth of audio issues.
I'll tell you, it was
So,
absolutely outrageous. It was absolutely outrageous. Speaking of outrageous, Wesley Novak saying, I can't hear you. You're lying. You're lying, dude. Yeah, crank
Wesley,
it up,
turn
brother.
your
Yeah,
volume up.
do what like
Turn your volume
Michael says in the comments there, right? Michael Shelby, super lax, says, crank it up. You better believe it. You got to do it. So we're really excited. Look, we're grateful for all of you, of course. Flashman, Jared Taylor Stan, really? Says, is this going to be a debate? No, it is not. No, it is not going to be a debate. It is a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, he would
probably. Yeah, probably. I have no shame in admitting that, man. You know, but it's like, it's one of these things, right? So in our world of talking about theology, philosophy, apologetics, history, in the digital universe, there is an enormous amount, right, of folks who are clamoring all the time for debate. The debate me bro meme is a thing, okay? So you have all these people, and there's an expectation amongst a lot of people, especially, no offense to the normies, normies and randos who don't do anything in this world, like of this kind of thing, that they're fascinated by the debate. The powers colliding. They like the warfare of it all, the sport of it all. But very few people have really thought through, what is debate? what am I doing when I'm watching debate? And I've been thinking about this topic and this issue, and it's had an impact on why I don't debate. I don't do formal debates. Never done one. Yeah, no. Yeah, I've done.
No, nor do I. I just have no interest in that. You know, it's not in my wheelhouse for one. It takes a range of skills that I don't think I possess. And I'll be honest, all the debates that I've ever watched before, I've never left with my mind changed. It doesn't matter how good or how bad my guy was or the other guy was. It's irrelevant. I was left thinking, that was BS. Or, yeah, we got him. We showed him. And so I've been thinking about it too, man. And the reason that I wanted, to get on the mic with you and to do this topic was because you're becoming the center of attention.
Don't say that.
You're moving towards the center of attention. It's no, I'm saying it. And it's similar to how I live in the center of time, so you're getting there eventually. And people, they come at you, these completely random people on Telegram and the YouTube comments are just ridiculous sometimes. And they were like, well, would you like to debate me? Because I've been click-clactivating for years now. And you're like, no. And so I thought, well, maybe people want to know why you don't. And that's kind of, folks, that's where we're at tonight.
Yeah, but by the way, real quick, in the comments, you cannot say that somebody is delayed in video and in audio. That makes no sense. So they would need to be, I don't know. Are they delayed? Is the audio, his mouth starting soon before his voice, or is his mouth starting after his voice? That's the question. You're not helping, Haley. Yeah.
If they're
otherwise,
both
at
delayed,
that point, man, at that point, what I would do, and is it the voice being delayed like super bad as going through? It's like real bad. I don't know. If so, dude, we might have to have you for tonight. We might need to be like one of those things where it's not even. Yeah, that's an ad hominem attack. Yeah, if you could, please let us know. In fact, my wife, she's in there. There's a delay. What kind? That's what I was asking. It may actually be something. Yeah, it may be something that we need to actually have it so that you're just on the picture, and I'll just set the delay of your voice to 0. Yeah. Says his voice and voice is out of sync.
That might work.
His voice and voice is out of sync. Stop! Or maybe it's his camera. Mouth is moving before his voice. Okay, thank you. That's what we were saying. That's what we were saying before.
Mouth moving.
So okay, so his mouth is moving before his voice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, video and voice. Wesley, stop it. Yeah, we may just need to say, because I'm at like 4 milliseconds at this, or 4,000. So we'll see. Yeah, stop delaying just debate. There's no debate in here. And here's the deal, okay? In fact, I can just go ahead, just let it play out. I know. This is on a small ET channel. It's on a small ET channel, chilling with some friends. So here's the thing, right? So do you want to just do it to where the camera's off, or you want to keep the camera on? Because I don't know if I've just made it worse or not by adding a delay. Yeah. Yeah, I know there's latency.
Off? I can stop the camera.
So we're going to just try going back to 0 for this. Yeah.
Oh my god! Try to change my audio avatar. All right, let's see if I can. Okay, so I'm just gonna. I don't know if y'all can hear me while I'm doing this. I'm gonna try to keep talking.
Yeah, he's gonna try to keep talking. Right? It's a bummer. We're gonna lose. We're gonna lose views, not just because of the terrible delay that we've got, but because now they're stuck having to see my mug and they're not seeing your face, and not just not your face, but for some reason you turned into this really weird dude on the screen that looks like. There you go. Okay. That's better.
Oh my goodness. Whew. Okay, people. Sorry, you had to look at him. I apologize. He's, Jeremiah is like 22 years older than I am, so I just apologize for all that. Anyway, Jer, why don't you debate? Why don't you debate? What are you afraid of?
What? Okay, so what am I afraid of? Nothing. Well, no. Let me take that back. I am afraid of misleading people and fueling a problem that I think has become just rampant in the day and age of just digital mediums. Because in this day and age, like before, if you wanted to debate somebody, you could do it in a private, interpersonal way for the most part, right? And that happens still all the time. You get in a discussion, it's not so formal. You're not at the house and saying like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to give you 20 minutes in the house, and then I get 20 minutes, and we both go through our position, and it's more of a dialogue. You're having a back and forth, right? You're having a back and forth. You would have, if you wanted a formal structured debate, you were predominantly either having that in a classroom setting, or you were having that in a setting where people would come and they'd bring their propositions, largely political, sometimes religious, and they would stand in front of audiences at times for a very, very long time. So like the Lincoln Douglas debates, for example, those buggers that run like 7 hours. So you're getting enormous amounts of information. But even then, I contend there's an issue. And the issue is that for many people, when they're watching debates, they're not even realizing, they think that they're engaging in something that has to do with what is true, right? And that they're coming to know the truth. But really what they're doing is they're coming to know how strong of a reaction, how quickly, how smoothly, and how intensely, for that matter, somebody can react. So they can react and use sometimes terrible arguments, but make the arguments sound good. And in the moment, there's a bedazzling that goes on of the mind that involves the way that the person delivers what they're trying to say. I think that we said we weren't going to call people out. I like this guy, classical theist, but he's a good example of this. As a communicator, he's not the best communicator in the world. I think he'd probably admit that. But he's got genius ideas. The dude is a genius. But if he's in a debate with someone who's really quick, just boom, 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 and they're kind of charismatic, and they're able to make arguments sound flashy, or to make them sound eloquent, or make them sound sufficiently good, to many people watching who are not trained in that sort of a thing, they may be led to believe that the arguments against him were much better than in fact they really were.
Right.
And on top of that person's debate, in that, whether the person who did a bad job defending the position or was not as smooth, so not a bad job in and of the substance of the argument itself, but the presentation quality, that for some reason that would affect the truthfulness of the system being defended. And I think that's a big problem.
So in effect, what you have is people who will tune in because they're interested in the topic, and they may not be trained in any formal logic or philosophical studies or anything like that. And they'll hear the smooth, charismatic argument and the clunky, very intellectual, sort of hard to follow argument, and they'll conclude the one is true and the other is false, even and with no actual relation to the truth or falsehood of the propositions. That's what you're getting at there?
Yeah, that someone can come in with a very clever argument, right? And the Bible talks about this in the Proverbs, the idea that what you hear at first might in fact sound kind of good, right? Like, hey, that sounds like a good idea. Wait till you hear something later. And I would say, wait until you're away from that. Wait until you're away. But look at the way sometimes, and I'll use our people that are generally considered on our side of things, right? As an example of this. So somebody who, if you read the actual substance of the arguments this person uses, and you reflect on who in the videos he's debating, and the substance of the arguments he's using, and the reaction of the crowd, and the popularity of the videos that have been played and shared, and the impact that has on audiences. As a good example of this, take Ben Shapiro. Take Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, if you read his transcripts, it's not the brightest thing in the world. A lot of times, it's a really good zinger. But zingers are whoop-de-doo-dahs, right, in the grand scheme of things. You can use a zinger to effect for like a reductio, but only insofar as it goes. If the person responding back has an argument back, that zinger has distracted. You get a lot of, woo, come on, yeah, and people get psyched. But the truth is, very little was actually said. And if you go and look at it, you go, It's actually not that great of an argument. And a lot of his
That's
arguments
exactly.
are against
Go ahead.
randos. They're against randos in the crowd.
Right.
If you go and look at the failed videos and the pwned videos, it's almost always people in the crowd, randos in the crowd who don't know jack, to be honest. They come up and they're saying something and he's just zing, zing, zing back. That's all it is. And they're normally one-liners. But
And
the
that's
idea...
precisely,
Yeah.
that's precisely why I caught myself doing that. Not engaging in debate, but consuming debates. Like I used to love to watch debates like involving Jimmy Akin, because I think he's a really great I think he's a great guy, and I would never come away disagreeing, no matter how astute the other side was, even if I thought, well, actually that's a really good argument, because he always had a great response. And it was a measure more of does he have something to say to that point, not does the thing he has to say actually check out as true, right? And then a guy like Shapiro or Michael Knowles, to keep with the Daily Wire, or a guy like Trent Horn, these guys are clever, right? And I'm not saying they're wrong in their arguments, because I think a lot of times they are in fact correct, but they're quick on their feet, and it gives you a warm and fuzzy feeling that you might not have if you were reading a text, let's say, or something like that. So I kind of share your outlook on this. Like, you can't just roll in with jazzy, snazzy statements and expect that people will think that you hold the truth. There's more to it than that. There's a deeper layer that needs to be peeled back, and that's behind the pizzazz, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So I think when we get down to that, it's never the guy. Oh, I shouldn't say never. It's not always the guy who was right who, quote unquote, wins a debate. It's the guy who sounded better, right? So there you go, folks. There's one reason why Jeremiah doesn't debate and why I don't debate. Because if we don't sound better than the other guy, well, for most people, by default, we've lost.
Well, and the thing is, like,
what we're saying is true.
And dude, here's the thing: you and I would inevitably sound better than most people. I think we're pretty good. We got good microphones. We got decent voices. We have personalities and stuff that would be able to embrace, to get involved in that. My concern is even deeper, to say the way that the person processes what's happening at all, without recognizing that debate says less about the truth of a proposition than it does about the person. Or that, and somebody brought up rhetoric, and it's true. The only issue with that, and rhetoric's important within the liberal arts, the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing. That's good if the substance of what you are trying to persuade people of through speaking or writing, with the use of figures of speech or other compositional techniques, is true. Right? If it is true, then it makes sense that you would learn that technique, you would learn the persuasiveness of that. And that's one of the things that why I try to educate people in understanding what other people believe, why they believe that, so that they can effectively communicate that with other people. But the problem is, it's similar as a noun, secondary use, language designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect on its audience, but often regarded as lacking in sincerity or meaningful content. Yeah. Bombast, loftiness, grandiloquence, right? All these other synonymous words with that. And you say it's a serious problem. And it's why it matters if people stumble over themselves. Even the Apostle Paul dealt with that he was weak in his speech. That's why he came in power, right? He says, when I'm in front of you, there's a kind of a weakness about him with this and his speaking. Moses, for crying out loud. But yeah, that didn't deny the truth of what they were talking about. But in a day and age where you're just simply basing it off of reason, and you don't have, for example, Aaron's staff, right? You're not having a shadow that's going to heal people and stuff like that. Then you are left to the devices, the chariots and horsemen of the mind. But the thing is in that world, it's not just one's ability to speak. It's even down to things like optics, right? The importance of optics. Like, for example, right now, Jake is a static picture, right? He's a static picture. People in seeing animated hands. So if you have all other things equal and one person's animated and one is not, just the natural tendency for pattern recognition, so long as you're not all over the map, pattern recognition, you may find yourself more biased toward the person you can see with the expressions. And so, and especially because you're watching on a visual medium. So I think there's like a lot of things that are going on in debates, and the very idea that not just what people are claiming to accomplish with a debate, but what's really at stake for people who don't think this through very well is that people who find themselves outside the church, a lot of times they'll say, well, I watched debates and I think this guy lost. And they're kind of confusing the subject and the object here. You could be a bad debater and the position that you maintain is true. But they see a bad debate and they go, that was one of the things that led me to sedevacantism. We're debates.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you have this one guy who can't answer the argument correctly, that means it must be false then. Because this one debater at this one point in time blanked in his mind, and therefore, the whole thing is just bunk. That's ridiculous. So there's another reason not to debate, because in the heat of the moment, you may not have the answer. And that has nothing to do with the truth or falsehood of the proposition. So again, you will lose the debate, or at least on that one point. But the people in the audience will think that the other side must be right, or at least there's a tendency for that, right? Because in my case, again, I keep coming, my own experience, I never changed my mind about anything. No one ever debated me out of a position I held. If I came to a new understanding, it was entirely on my own through reading or watching lectures or conversations with friends. It was never, X versus Y, and I thought X, and turns out Y did better, and I changed my mind. Not one time. So anyway, it's just
it's actually healthy. And there's this unhealthy thing that's kind of like anticipating that, well, I've seen this guy get in a bunch of debates and he's not doing very good. Maybe he'll switch positions. Again, it's coming down to this idea that it's the debate itself. And again, I've seen a lot of debates with people who I wouldn't think are very skilled debaters when it comes to Catholicism or it comes to theism in general. You know how many bad arguments I've seen from theists? Enormous, right? I've seen an enormous amount. Does that say anything about theism? And it's one of those things where if you do good, you take credit for it and it's your system. If you do bad, people differentiate the system from. So it's like they're trying to eat their cake and have it too. You know what I mean?
Right. And there's no losing for somebody who's convinced.
Yeah, you're not going to convince the person. And that's any study that's done finds people that in those debates, people are more convinced of their own position when they're done, right? And if they're not more convinced, they're equally convinced, but they're not as persuaded that that particular guy or girl who was involved in the debate did a very good job, oftentimes just in that particular debate. But that reveals something. It reveals there's a very popular debater on Twitter who was talking about the need to get involved in these kinds of debates and was saying that it's kind of like MMA. You can tell people all day long that they're, how to debate and this is a good argument, but you need to see it in action, like, sparring. But that doesn't say anything about that particular kind of martial art. You could have somebody really bad at jits. It doesn't say that jits is bad. You could have somebody bad at kung fu. Doesn't mean kung fu is bad. You could have somebody really good at kung fu and another guy really good at capoeira, and it never says anything about capoeira because capoeira sucks. It's not real. It's fake. It's not real. I wouldn't want to fight a guy like that, but I wouldn't really worry about it. He's too busy dancing. So the thing is, though, is like that a lot of times the idea is it says more about the person. And in the comments, somebody brought this up. It's inevitable that it's good for political debates. But that's not because the system. In fact, in the comment, it specifically said not to convince me of a particular system, but to kind of get an idea for that person. Posturing matters. Why does it matter in a presidential debate? Why would that be different than a debate over, let's say, Catholicism? Because you're not electing that person who's debating Catholicism. The person matters in a presidential debate, because that person is going to be president, and that person is going to make decisions that are extremely difficult, that he or she has to act in a specific way and have a certain kind of demeanor that you desire, right, to vote for them. And the expectations that you have, that they're able to grapple with difficult things, sometimes rapidly, because they're going to have to make rapid decisions, especially when a lot is on the line. And so it matters in that way to see that person matters, their skill and ability to do that. But if you're not running for office, if you're not trying to be the president of the United States or something, and you're Rando Joe or Rando Jane wanting to get involved in, a tussle online, some internet blood sport, it really is about you being the capoeira guy and showing how dope you are. And I'm uninterested in that. I'm not. And the last thing I'll say, man, is like, to me, I disliked when that apologist said that. I disliked it for a number of reasons, but one of them was because he's just dead wrong on the idea that it doesn't say anything if you're not personally able to go and do that, right? To go and do that yourself. Tons of coaches who coached world teams that were best teams in the world, right? Some of the best players of all time. Those guys were not necessarily the best players in the world. Did they know the basics of a game? Sure. How about the greatest golf instructor of all time, Harvey Pinnock? Harvey Pinnock barely played after he was young. You saw, Arnold Palmer, young Arnold Palmer, hitting balls off of a driving range, and he put his clubs up. He said, "I'm done." It's another generation of people. He's recognized to this day as one of the greatest golf coaches of all time. Didn't play much himself, but yet trained the people who did. And not just the people at the top, but people, everyday folks, who take it to their church leagues or whatever else. I think that's the primary function of apologists in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely agree about that. So I see a lot of comments, and by the way, I'm not getting the comments on our defunct version of StreamYard.
I know,
so
because
I had to pull up YouTube, and so I'm watching you, and then I'm watching you, and I'm watching the little circle around me vibe in and out. It's kind of neat, actually. No, so I think I lost my train of thought. Why? So what would be a reason to debate? Well, I'll start. I'll say, if you have the same presuppositions with somebody and there's a dubious matter, then that matter can be debated. If you're entering on the same level, like if you have a faithful Catholic debating a faithful Catholic, and they both accept church teaching, they both accept scripture and tradition, and so on, and there's a doubtful matter at hand, then okay, hash out the argument. But if you're debating a guy, does God exist? Well, you're not coming into the debate playing by the same rules. At least you don't think you are. And that's what's key, right? You may ultimately be playing by the same rules, principle of non-contradiction and all that. But if you're not consciously embracing the same presuppositions, then a debate just becomes, like we've said, this whole time, a show. It's mere rhetoric. It's hooray for our side, and ooh, we got him there, without any reference to what's actually true, good, and beautiful. What do you say to that? If somebody said, well, you should actually debate because there is good that can come from that.
Yeah. Well, I believe there's good that can come from debate. My criticism has to do primarily with formal, structured debates that are done in front of live audiences, that are this in-the-moment, back-and-forth sparring between two different people. I think that the past provides a better template, and especially with digital. I'm definitely not a fan. But, I think that the past provides a better template. I think one of those things that we've lost with digital visual communication is the wisdom and power of the typographical mind. One of the things in the typographical mindset was that you could have debates. For example, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. You would have people write something down, submit it, right? People could send things to newspapers, various publications, and it could circulate, and then you could respond back, or you could propose your own. But it gave you the ability, that time, patience, right? the discipline of writing something and selecting your words in a way that's much different than and giving you time even for looking up sources. There's no in the moment. I think the person's this, or I think the quote's that, and getting the little zingers here and there. You have time to actually sit down, write your position out, engage in that way, and it doesn't have to be a full blown book. I think that one of the debates that was excellent that went on for a while, Stork versus Thomas Woods Jr. Those two went back and forth. Thomas Stork and Thomas Woods Jr. back and forth on distributism, libertarianism. A number of my writings were included in kind of the catalog of select writings or videos that played a big role in the development of that discussion. You can find them online. I was a contributing editor at the Distributist Review, but I wasn't engaged in a real-time debate back and forth to see how quick my dancing feet were, or how quick his dancing feet were, or how powerful of the zingers he has, or vice versa. Instead, everybody was beholden to writing something down, taking the time, reading it through. There was no need. There was no deadline. You could use a deadline if you want. I've proposed that. I've told people, if you want to debate, number one, you could always make a video. I'm not even saying you got to get away from digital mediums. Just if you want to make a video, make a response video. That's old school. That's trad YouTube, like 2008. Make a response video. And that way you can use your sources, share your sources in the description, and then the other person can take it, go through one by one, and go back and forth. I did it with the diamonds. I made a video. They made a video. I made a video. They made a video back. By the second round, they went straight ad hominem, but ad hominem on me, But like the thing is, it at least gave time to process what that person was saying, and it wasn't some championship bout to find out how good of a boxer you are in the moment, and if you can duck and dodge quick, because that's just about you. A system is on the line. Truth is what it's about.
Right, and that's how the scholars do it. That is how, like, you subscribe to this or that academic journal. Like I'm only fortunate enough to subscribe to one, and I'm not going to say the title of it because I want people to guess. But I subscribe to one, and you get an issue every usually 3 months, something like that. For other, it varies, but somebody will write an article. 3 months will go by, then you'll have a response. 3 more months will go by, then another response. You think it through. Like you said, you're able to track down sources, to verify quotes, to wrestle with the opponent's position. And that's a more wholesome and honest way, intellectually honest way, because that is how you can really convince people. When you're not going tit for tat in the moment, trying to entertain, trying to be flashy, trying to score cheap points. By the way, I think I'm still in the lead because I started off with infinity. You're not trying to score cheap points here. It's undeniable, bro. Central time, infinity, 2 strikes. Yeah. It's just the way it is. But if you take a step back from the flair of the debate and you do write it down, that is immensely helpful at actually arriving at truth. Because you know what else? If debates aren't recorded, and a lot of them are these days, but suppose one isn't, then you're going off of your memory. Versus if it's written down, you can just go pull it off of the shelf.
Yes. Oh, dude, totally. And that's what I'm saying. Like, just the luxury of that. And if people say, well, I don't want to give them that much time, then you are really into, the whole butterfly deal. Like, how fast are your dancing feet?
Then you don't. That's what,
are you doing quick? And it's like, dude, that's what you're into when you watch Bruce Lee or something. That makes sense. It makes sense that the very popular guy that I'm probably not going to name anymore until he names me, the really popular guy at Catholic Answers, the name that starts with the T and ends with a rent horn, is a guy, it makes sense in that world. If he wants to demonstrate the same kind of thing my son's doing, my son's going for his black belt, right? So he's going for his black belt in Taekwondo. So he does sparring, because in order to get that belt, that accomplishment, then it makes sense. And you go, yes, if an individual is going for that accomplishment, then that makes sense. if an individual is attempting to increase and secure the faith of other people simply by relaying the truth of the gospel in a way that is deeply profound to them when they sit and reflect on it, more than the zinger, more than the quick, more than a video that you got to scroll through, but something you can easily go back to over and over again to highlight and write in the margin, all that, print it out on your computer. If that's the goal, then the dancing feet's not it. You know, like you said, you'd have
That's
time.
right.
And it doesn't even have to be, someone can say 3 months, and you can say, dude, give it 3 days. It's more than what you have in 3 seconds.
Right. And I think if you're one of those people who are not willing to give time to the opponent's views and arguments and opinions, then you don't actually care about discovering the truth, because who among us is perfect, right?
Yeah.
None of us hold absolutely true and perfect ideas about every last thing. So if you're not willing to examine what you believe and be challenged, then I don't know. And I mean, this is in a qualified sense, because some stuff is just so ridiculous that it doesn't deserve the time of day. But if you have somebody presenting a reasonable argument that's well-founded, that you don't just write that off. It deserves to be wrestled with. And that may take some time. That may take more than a moment, right? So there's another reason why not to debate the way debates are typically done these days, particularly online. For me, though, and I don't know about you, Jeremiah, but I just find the whole thing sort of like, it's kind of like a blood sport for me. It's sort of like I just want to consume debate after debate after debate, and then I'll reflect on, well, what did I learn? Who said what? And how did they frame their argument? And I realized I don't know. I wasn't really listening. I was just watching it or listening to it for entertainment. I didn't think it through. I didn't pause and digest it. And folks, let's be honest. You can't see me right now, but I'm shaking my head, because how many of you have done the exact same thing? You watch, you got a guy you like, he's debating this other guy, and you hope he just rakes him through the mud, and it's pure entertainment, and you don't learn a darn thing. What is the point? You just wasted an hour of your life.
And you could have read a book about the topic.
You could have read a book.
You could have read a book.
Yeah. You know, so here's the thing, somewhat unrelated. There's a group of guys and I in the St. Louis area who we meet once a month. We read a small to medium length something, a couple chapters of a book, or maybe an article, lengthy article. And one guy is assigned to write, and he has to write for or against, however he thinks, and he has to present it. And we're just getting this thing off the ground, but we've had a couple of meetings already. We show up, right? We exchange pleasantries, we pour our drinks, and then we get to the material. And okay, this is what I read. What did you make of that? Well, this is what I thought. What did you make of this? And then towards the end, the guy whose job it was to write something down has to present it. And we have to give him the time of day, no matter what he thought. And we have to wrestle with the position that he's taken. And so it really forces us to slow down, to think it through. And I'll be honest, I come away with not necessarily a changed mind, but a broader mind, right? I can take in more for having listened to something that I didn't think of, and listen carefully, right? Not just listened to wait for my turn to speak, but listened in such a way that when I responded, I was engaging with the idea. You cannot do that if you're passively consuming a YouTube debate, or if you're a part of the debate and you're simply, well, here are my talking points. Here's what I've got to get through. I know he'll probably say this. How will I counter that? You're not really arriving at truth. It's just sophistry at that point. Do you see where I'm coming from here?
Yes. Yeah, I was listening. It was grand. It was grand. Look, it's one of these things where, when people are debating a topic, and this is one of these things, I was in a conversation today with a guy. He's a lawyer. He's a really cool dude. And he's very accustomed to arguing the argument. And a lot of apologists are, and they get flustered at the fact that I'm a first things first kind of guy, and I like talking about those things that precede the argument, the frameworks wherein arguments and evidences even make sense at all. Because my position is that if their argument is in fact true, it would make evidence meaningless, knowledge meaningless, and you demonstrate that through deconstruction. But the thing is like these are massively complex ideologies. These are massively complex worldviews that people are debating. It's not just one proposition. That you can debate that all day long. You'll find yourself driven back to a place that's much more complex than you imagine, inevitably. Because you're going to say, well, how is it that we're both looking at the same thing and we're coming to different conclusions about the exact same thing? Eventually, it's going to force you back to a deeper consideration. And one of those things that makes that tough to do is the idea of the blood sport, right? You get that taste of blood, you're all pumped up. Yeah, man, it's the debate. You tuned in, I'm tuned in right now. We're watching and we're saying this person did good here and this person did bad there. We're excited about the person, that's fine. But what are we doing that for? Why are we doing it because of the person? Are we doing it because of the truth the person is proposing? Is it because we think just that person's particularly good and maybe we hope that he gets better because he's going to get a black belt one day? There's no cookie at the end of this. There's no cookie at the end of that. There's no, it's like doing some kind of breathing exercise, holding your breath or something, going underwater and holding your breath. If you feel like you got to breathe, come up. There's no cookie for just holding it forever and ever and ever. You just come on up. And so, but there's this idea that we're driven by it. And yet we're not even really, truth be told, we're not really addressing those things that are the most fundamental to the debate at hand. And when that kind of thing does happen, people complain it was derailed. Or that it's made, oh, well, now I've got to talk about all those things. And you go, that's what they're arguing for. They're arguing from a position, in defense of a position, using evidences in harmony with what they claim to be their position on that. And they're using all those things. And we say, we don't need to think about any of that. I think it's deeper. And I think that it gets skewed and it gets it kind of concealed when we're enthralled by the spectacle of online debates, the blood sport of the back and forth, the power of the zinger, right? We remember those things. In fact, there's something from the outline that was really good. It said, people, yes, even you, do not make decisions on an entirely rational basis. Studies have proved this, by the way, over and over and over again. In fact, people in studies where they watched debates and they were arguing that the person who was logical was the best, that and it's kind of framed this way on purpose, that once they followed up with them, were more persuaded of the person who was using stories and personal experiences. And not, so like the truth might not care about your feelings, but people do. And anybody who's studied how to persuade people understands that before they even sit down to a debate. It's why conservatives have an advantage over liberals who use numbers, right? So you have one person on one side speaking a narrative, a story, using personal examples, and another one crunching a bunch of numbers. Most people, they're going to go blurry-eyed by the numbers or blurry-eyed by the big fancy terms, getting in conversations what's phaser, right? You talking about the unactuated actualizer kind of thing, unactualized actualizer. Once you get into that world, people are like, what? I mean, they're overwhelmed. They don't really even grasp what you're saying. Now, the guy you're debating might, but you're not addressing those most underlying assumptions. And not head on. I'm not meaning to dog Phaser. I'm not meaning to dog Trent Horn either. Just dog to be clear. But it says an audience is more easily won with a one-liner that inspires applause or laughter than a 5-minute explanation of a complicated phenomenon. A false statistic repeated confidently will be more convincing than a truth stated haltingly by some guy you've never heard of and who you've already decided you don't like because he's arguing against the guy you came to see. And it says, debate's not politics, it's theater. Real learning is hard. It's a slow, confusing process where you sometimes have to read long books with dreadful covers and look at footnotes and stuff like that. So he uses the sh word in there. It requires us to recognize and then to overcome our biases as best we can. It can take years, in fact, to learn what we really think and why. And then if we get a lingering feeling we might be wrong, it can take years, in fact, to unlearn and start over. And I think that that's lost And it's unsurprising to me that digital debates or debates on digital mediums have become so increasingly popular, not just because it's around, but increasingly popular with the Burger King generation, the "I want my way right away, Burger King now"
Right.
thing. It's
And the
unsurprising.
30-second soundbite, and the if I, if my food can't be microwaved, then it's not worth it. I'll just starve generation. It's all connected, obviously. And I think it all plays into this same phenomenon of, I don't really want my mind to be changed. I kind of just want to be entertained. I want my guy to win. I want to feel good about my position, regardless of whether it's true or false, or maybe a little bit of both. Doesn't matter. I just want to be I want to be validated, and that's it. I just want to consume this, and may the best man not win, because I don't care. But the things you were saying a moment ago, Jeremiah, give me an opportunity for a somewhat delayed, no pun intended, segue. Can you give me, live on the air, a crash course in paleo pre-sup? And I'm giving you
Yeah.
a 5-minute time limit. At 5 minutes, I
Yeah.
will yell into the microphone and stop you.
Okay.
Ready, go.
So it's the idea that the best argument for the existence of God, or the best proof, is that without God, you would have no proofs or argument or knowledge or being at all. So it's going down to the first things first. It is taking it on the idea of a system. Okay, so like Saint Irenaeus or Saint Francis de Sales, to recognize the interplay between the hypothesis we have, the canon that we have, our ultimate authority of things, and the system that is created around that, the superstructure. And that's true of the way we think, right? So to lay that out in really simple terms, when you are talking with somebody or debating with somebody, right? When you do that and you sit down at a dinner table and you're talking to somebody about God, we'll just use atheism as just an example. When you sit down with an atheist and you're talking about certain proofs, or they bring up a specific claim or a specific argument or a specific study that was done, they're not just trying to propose that. It's like a Trojan horse, right? They want you ultimately to recognize the validity of a system. And behind that one argument, when you sit down at that table, are a bunch of ideas about the world, about knowledge, about morality, that are kind of hidden. They're behind them, but they're part of the deal. It's part of what they're proposing, just like you. You might only be talking about the unmoved mover, but you're not just talking about the unmoved mover. You are a person who believes in a bunch of different stuff that flows and surrounds the unmoved mover, okay? And that is what you're ultimately hoping that person would embrace. And your idea of the unmoved mover, or your idea of the ultimate authority of morality, or your idea about where the world came from, how we can know things, is the world outside of us an illusion? Is it real? All of those things play a really important role in the way that you think, even as you're talking about other topics. And it's the same with them. In fact, one thing that often happens is people will say, just from this one sentence, right? I'll demonstrate. You say, I would like to debate you. There's a bunch of assumptions here. Number one, I'm not you. Number two, you are you. Number three, that means we live in a world of one and many, unity and diversity, things that are alike and things that are different. You believe that communication is meaningful. You believe that things can be argued from proofs from the past, and it would make sense in a future debate. That there's a stability about the world, a uniformity about the external world, that there is an external world, that it's not just in your brain, okay? So there's a such thing as truth, that there's a way to communicate that objectively, that you plan to use logic or reason, and that you believe that these laws of logic are in fact universal, that it's not just, well, I happen to agree with laws of logic, but you don't have to. Like, we believe that that's a universally binding thing, So if somebody comes to you and says, I'm in the room and not in the room at the same time and in the same way, we say that's gobbledygook nonsense. And we don't buy it, right? We have an expectation. And we believe that when you do that, that you would come with at least a kind of goodwill enough not to just blatantly lie or come in to try to kill you. So you have an idea that there's an objective morality. There's some kind of thing that could be distinguished between something that is in fact good and something that is in fact bad. All of those things make sense within our worldview. We can make sense of the one and the many with the Trinity. We can make sense of the objective world because of creation, because we live and move and have our being within this order, that's meaningful, that there's order and uniformity to it, that there's a predictability within it because of the way God designed it, and that there's good and bad because God's the ultimate authority of these things. Our worldview as a whole makes that not only possible, but intelligible. Any worldview that deviates from that does, to the extent that they deviate, fall. Inevitably, they fall short. It fails because ours would be the coherent that's able to make sense of the whole, whereas the opponent's position, insofar as it deviates from that, to that extent, it would be false, and it would cave in ultimately on itself, especially if the things that it deviates on are the most fundamental things. And the way that that's proven is not by coming to them with a positive argument or this and that, but we have to begin, in my position, with deconstructing the opponent, right? Showing on their own claims how it fails. Secondly, by constructing ours contra the error of the opponent. And that is done with the use of proofs. And we can use proofs that are natural theology, stuff that we've used for a very long time. And the only reason why we need to get back to this place of dealing with those first things first is not only that it's an age-old apologetic methodology, but because we live in a world where that common ground and that fabric on what we know, what's good and bad, what reality is, and all of those things is toast. It's toast.
Right. That was awesome, dude. You bought me 5 minutes of contemplation. And
was
contrary
that 5 minutes?
to
Did I
I
go
don't know.
over?
It was pretty close.
I hope I didn't go over.
Nobody would be surprised. Nobody would be surprised if you did. In fact, at 2 minutes, Jay was saying that you had went over and that I had fallen asleep. And Rachel says I'm off getting a snack. And Rachel wasn't entirely incorrect. I was thinking about going to make another cocktail because I could still hear you, but I elected to stay in my chair. But anyhow, so while you were talking, it made me think of, here's a perfect practical instance of everything you just said, sort of encapsulated into one anecdote. And forgive me, this is one of those things we were kind of bashing earlier. I don't know who this was. I don't know when. You can't look it up because I couldn't give you any details. But there was a debate one time, a Catholic versus a Protestant, and the Catholic happened to be a priest, Father somebody Dominican, right? Father so-and-so OP. And the Protestant guy started, and he said something to the effect of, well, we both know that Romans is the inspired word of God is in the Bible. And the Dominican priest said, I don't actually know that, prove it. Because he was challenging the Protestant presuppositions. And evidently, again, this is somewhat hearsay, if you will. The interlocutor, the Protestant, was so flustered trying to prove that Romans was scripture without having recourse to Catholicism that he walked away because his presuppositions were challenged. This Dominican priest, whoever he was, he did an amazing job getting right to the heart of the matter. Oh, you believe this? Well, why? And he just, I don't think Romans is in the Bible, actually. Tell me why I should think that. And the guy couldn't do it because he didn't examine his own presuppositions. And so he utterly was destroyed, right, as we're saying. But this Dominican priest wasn't particularly charismatic. It wasn't for show. It was simply, why do you think that?
Yeah.
So he did what you're describing. You get right to the heart of the matter. And I think finally, after I don't know how long we've been on here, 50 minutes or so. We've gotten right to the heart of the issue. Why not debate? Because in my experience, now I know this isn't universal, take it for what it's worth. In my experience, when you debate somebody, you haven't checked their presuppositions or your own to see if they match up to the point where a debate would even be fruitful. It goes back to what we were saying before about scoring points or being flashy, and they don't really care about the pursuit of truth. If you're not starting off on the same page, then nothing's going to come of it. It's entirely irrelevant, and it's, may the best man win according to the subjectivity of the audience with zero reference to the objectivity of the truth at hand.
Yes. And I'd add that I think it's one of these things where there is a benefit to that. In fact, somebody in the comments said this. It said, Zach said, I'm of the opinion that watching a guy like Trent Horn give a good defense of the faith in a high-profile debate can move a casual observer who would otherwise not watch videos or read letters. Maybe. And you have to grant that. You have to grant that there are people, but that cuts both ways. It cut that opposite direction with me on sedevacantism. It cut the opposite direction with me on atheism for a while. That I was like, I'm no longer persuaded by this. But it wasn't. It leads to a false idea as to what is leading us there in the first place. All right. For one, it's monocle man par excellence, right? This idea that we're like, I'm gonna judge for myself. I'm gonna judge if this is really true. The entire time, the only way that you would be able to salvage truth, the only way that you'd be able to salvage being, the only way that you'd be able to salvage morality, metaphysics, the whole kit and caboodle, is if in fact the Christian worldview were true. And that's demonstrable. You'd be able to demonstrate this with reason, with logic. In fact, the very use of logic itself as something that is abstract, that's something that is of universal application, that's incumbent upon us, that there's an expectation of that upon the other person. It smacks against the idea of the unbeliever who's coming to you, or the one who believes in a purely materialistic universe. That would be, it would make it nonsensical, and it would result in the end, and this is, I think, something that people need to reflect on. In the end, it would genuinely be a situation like the Tractatus that says, Wittgenstein's like, look, if you've been following along with what I've been doing and you reach the top, you realize that this entire thing has been folly. This whole thing has been, in fact, absurd in a way, and you kick away the ladder that you used to reach this height, only to now pass over everything in silence. And I say that is maybe the most poetic explanation of what I'm trying to say is going on, if we're using the very tools that those belief systems can't even account for. They cannot account for the intelligibility of the universe. They cannot account for how we have coherence at all, and not just one knowledge of one thing, and the narrative structures that we make that may or may not be true, or ideas that if you only know based on experience, the problem that you face when you haven't experienced everything. What do you do? Number one, can you even verify that's true? That the only way people can know anything at all is by experience? You can only conclude that tentatively and say, well, I've personally never met anybody who learned anything other than that. Well, you haven't talked to a lot of people who claim that they've learned things not through experience, right? And ideas about the world, well, natural law. Well, have you experienced all those things? Or are you projecting and saying that I believe that this is reflected through the entirety of the whole? And how would that not fall prey to the very, very problem that we talk about logical fallacies, about the fallacy of composition? So there's all sorts of issues that go with this. And I think one thing in this debate, watching Trent Horn can give a good defense of the faith in a high-profile debate. Here's one of the high-profile debates that I can imagine moving the dial in a weird direction, and it's a double whammy for us, or two birds with one stone for us, because it also goes to show that sometimes when a debate makes a turn to something that's more fundamental to the entire debate as a whole, that a lot of people say it went off the rails. And that's the debate with Jay Dyer. The debate with Jay Dyer, it was meant to be about a specific proposition. It got wrapped up in a big debate over worldviews, how we know what we know, foundationalism, and people were like, well, there was just no focus. And it's like, but it actually got to the matter that is foundational, right? Foundationalism. It got to the matter, the heart of the matter on how do we know anything at all? You're trying to propose that we can know God through nature. I'm asking a more fundamental question of you. Is, given your philosophy, how could you know anything at all? And that debate, it would be behind the scenes. In other words, we'd be begging the question. We'd be using something that we haven't even made an account of. We just assume it and just walk forward. It's begging the question. So we're already riddled with problems. But once it gets into that universe, it feels like it's derailed. And people don't know where to go with it. They're like, whoa, and then you would need way more time because you're talking about something quite deep. It's why I think it's valuable to have multi-series debates. If you're going to do a debate on a video, do it in multiple series and begin with first things first. You may find that your position's pulled out from beneath you, but hey, at least you didn't waste our time.
And if your position is pulled out from beneath you, thank that person.
Yes.
You don't go away mad. You thank him for showing you the truth. And the debate series thing, that's a brilliant idea. And I think what it gets to the heart of the matter is if you expose someone's presuppositions and they're uncomfortable about that, it's because these are worldview changing realities. These are life changing realities. This isn't just, oh, I thought that X political solution was good, but now I kind of think that X prime political solution is good. These are like, well, I didn't believe in God before, but now I think that like Christ is God. So I have to do something about that. I've got a little book at home. It's on my shelf in the other room. And it's called Who Do You Say That I Am? And that is the question. Obviously, it's Christ posing it to his apostles. Who do you say that I am? That's what the presuppositional argument ultimately leads to. And it's no wonder that people are uncomfortable by that. Because if you answer, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, the way Peter answered, then that's not neutral information where you walk away and you go home and you're like, hey, good afternoon, dear. Guess what I learned today while I was at work? That is literally life-changing stuff. And so it's no wonder why people shy away from the presuppositional aspect of debates. And people say it went off the rails. I just came here for the topic. Well, the topic is secondary. How you live your life, what you believe and why you believe it, that's primary. All these things will fall in place, right? So there's, I mean, I'm not counting, but there's yet another reason not to debate.
Yeah, and like in the comments too, you got EBT, right? And he's one of these guys where you can explain something sometimes written down, and it doesn't matter. Like you can all day long, and it's like, well, okay, I hear you. But we must first use reason to arrive at the presuppositional position. Are you saying that there's no conceptual framework for reason? That's nonsensical. You wouldn't be able to distinguish between one thing and another. or come up with the idea if you say, well, no, you don't need to have presuppositions first. The very definition of the word is that you presuppose them. It's an ultimate position. It's kind of, this is easy. I'll make this as easy as humanly possible. Logic. This goes back to Socrates, Aristotle, the whole gang. This is old school philosophy. This is not new. This is not Van Til. It's not Bonson. This is old school, and it's simple. It says, how do we prove logic? If we presuppose that you must use logic, based on what? Well, we can find out. Let's say, how do we argue for it? Well, you can argue as you can argue with a proposition that needs another proposition that needs another proposition that goes on in an infinite regress. That's one way, which means you've never answered the question. Or that you have a regress that goes on and 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 on until finally it loops back to the beginning, right? And that's a circle. Or you just say, I don't need to defend it, I just do it, and that's fideism. Or you argue for it from the impossibility of the contrary from the get-go. And you go, yes, just attempt to not use it. You rely on it constantly. Without it, you couldn't make sense of anything. You wouldn't be able to make sense out of reason or the things we are reasoning about. You have to have some kind of conceptual framework and foundation whereupon to make any sense of anything whatsoever. That is something that is given to us as creatures created in the image of God. That's what that is. And it precedes, which is why we can look at one thing and another thing and another thing and rightfully talk about the universe, even if our experience is in fact quite limited, because there's a harmony between them. And you can make that claim without experiencing everything in the universe. You would be able to do it. And you couldn't say, well, I've experienced a lot of stuff on the earth. Well, number one, you haven't. Your experience is on the whole, with 7 billion people, the planet as big as it is, nobody, even the person who's traveled all over the place, everywhere they go, they're one of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And all around the world in this little blue ball in one galaxy of a very large universe. To say that that experience, in your ant-like experience, is reflective of the whole, that's a huge, gigantic assumption. And I would say, based on what? Based on what? Without falling prey to the fallacy of composition. And good luck with that, especially, and how does it not, if you only know instance by instance by instance by instance, right? So you learn one object, another object, and you say, well, this is the letter S, for example. How would you even know what the letter S is? How would you know what a letter is? It'd be squiggly, but how would you know squiggly from straight? It's kind of like a letter doesn't make sense outside of a word or outside of an alphabet. And the word doesn't make sense outside of the sentence, and the sentence doesn't make sense outside of a paragraph. There's context required to make sense of individual, isolated experiences, takeaways that we have from our experience and sense data, and that those things, there's an interplay between your metaphysic, the big world picture, and your particular experience, your knowledge of that through the senses. There's an interplay, and that interplay is harmonious. And so, yeah, I mean, long story short, your presupposition, now you may come to a better understanding, in fact, of what you are relying upon to make sense of the world around you. You may come to a greater awareness of the fact that you live and move and have your being in this world, but that doesn't all of a sudden just start the moment you come to the conclusion it's true. It's been true the whole time. It was true before you were born. It was true of the world before people were even created. Because the world was created before brains. And we can only know these things insofar as God knows them anyway. And so it makes no sense. But yeah, so the idea that you must conclude through reason to then presuppose something other than reason is folly. Because that would mean that's what was happening as you were doing your reasoning. You just came to an awareness of it. There was a light that shined on that. You became cognizant of it, but it was true nonetheless all the while.
Yeah, so these are all amazing reasons why neither Jeremiah nor I engage in debate. And somebody will say, well, these aren't very good reasons. Well, okay, you can think that if you want. But at the end of the day, we stand by what we've said. And I have to admit, my 2 oldest sons, they're 9 and 8. They're making their first Holy Communion tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central Time, here in the center of time. And I would be remiss if I didn't alert you, Kaiser, that the hour is late, and I must soon go.
Yeah,
I must soon go. But nonetheless, if everyone out there, please offer an Ave for my 2 boys, Joseph and Charles.
Yes.
They are extremely excited. They have been waiting, well, their whole lives, but consciously waiting for a couple of years now in preparation for the sacrament. And tomorrow morning is going to be so amazing. There's going to be a group of children confirmed, and then we'll have high mass right afterwards. And during the communion rite, my 2 boys, right? I've got 5 boys, but the 2 oldest ones, they're going to receive our Lord for the first time. So everybody, please
Yes,
please
man.
pray for them.
Yes,
It's
dude.
going to be awesome.
And when is this?
This is tomorrow morning.
Dude, tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow.
Brother, man. Dude, huge congratulations. Give him a big hug, man. Your kids are cool. I love talking to you. We talk on like Mondays and stuff and everything after Terror Demons. We talk and everything. And it's always cool, man, because we talk before your kids wake up. So I get to see them like when they first first wake up and they're still like zoned and they're like, what is this?
Like, who is that guy?
And wanting that. What is it? What's the sandwich, dude? Is it peanut butter?
Oh, my
eggs?
goodness.
What is it? It's the daily thing. What is it?
The daily. So it's peanut butter toast and an orange and a glass of milk in a cup. He says it just like that.
Don't you love it?
And he's placing he's Jeremiah's talking about one of the younger boys placing his breakfast order with me every night when I tuck him in for bed, as if I'm not going to feed him the next day unless he says something about it, right? And he'll wake up and he's like, first thing, Dad, can I have breakfast? I'm like, just a second, buddy. Why don't you sit down over here and wake up? Peanut butter toast and an orange and a glass of milk in a cup. And it's the cutest thing.
Yeah, bro. Well, all right. Anyway. Sounds good to me. Well, I apologize everybody for the issue with the video and stuff. We'll figure it out. I may have to just use Skype or something. I've used Skype before. It's the first time I ever tried using StreamYard, and we waited until the end to figure out like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna, the video delay, audio delay. So I apologize about that. What we'll end up doing probably for this one, I'll probably put it on private and create numerous segments like we do with other videos, like I did with my the video that I did with on Mass of the Ages. And that way it's got its own topic and it highlights its own thing, and we'll make a catalog, right, of the first one, because there were some numerous bumps and bruises on that. And so we'll see. Maybe we'll leave it up. I don't know. Maybe leave it up publicly. People can watch the whole thing if they want, but we'll also do it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we should just leave it up because, come what may, technological issues. I was called a boomer, even though I'm like 54 years younger than you. I don't know what to say about it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, in the comments,
I don't understand with the whales. What's with the whales?
Because whales have sex. Because that's the video I talked about, and I don't even know what brought it up, but Veronica made a video that starts out, whales have sex, and it starts with that, and it was talking about the bulls and all this, and how even tribes understand. I don't even know what the context was, but this video went out and people were cracking up. So ever since, it's been whales, and now we've got seals apparently. So there's seals for that. But I'll say before we go, for one, dude, you're an awesome guy, Jake. You're an awesome dude. And you've been actually on my heels about this because we've been talking about doing this for a while. And so you're on my heels. And it takes a while for me to kind of flighty, dude. And so it's been good to work with you. We'll do this a lot more, right? Especially in the summer. We'll do this a lot more. And once we figure out everything else, it'll run perfecto mundo, super dupe smooth. And so that'll be a bunch of fun. We'll have different topics. If people want any kind of suggestion for topics to talk about, let us know. You can do that, PaleocratDiaries@gmail.com. Or even better, just don't even make me go to Gmail, please. Just go to Telegram. And that way you can DM us. You can DM Jake. You can DM myself. Video call, voice chat, doesn't matter. In fact, I'm doing a voice chat right after this. I'm going straight over to Telegram, hopping on the Wolfpack, addressing some of the questions in here that were not addressed during the show. It won't be forever. It's not a Q&A. It won't be recorded, but just a fun time. And then I'll dip out and people can stay if they want to stay. I know Jake's got to get going because he's got tomorrow.
Yeah, in the future, though,
yeah,
I'll join you for that. Whenever we do these tandem shows, assuming we plan far enough ahead and all that, I'll definitely stick around for the live chat. Just this one thing that I gotta take care of tomorrow.
Yeah, it's good. And the last thing is that before we mute and I go to the closing credits and stuff, there's, for all of my many disagreements with EBT, and there are a few, he's a difficulty. He's always fire under my feet, man, all the time. I'm like, cut it out, homie. But he says this, perfecto. I mean, it's awesome. In case anyone is still keeping tabs, Jesus Christ won. Okay? Viva Cristo Rey. Totally true. Totally true. No matter what, man. Good debate, good presentation, bad presentation, super mega dope video quality, or, you know, the lack of skills that was on display with your boy struggling to make sure that Jake's mouth and voice were aligned and everything else. The sync was totally out of sync. Regardless of all of those things, right? No matter how good it is, no matter how bad it is, no matter how anything else, Christ is king. Christ is king. And so, amen to that. All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate it. If you want to go ahead, I'm going to go to the end screen. Here we go. Ah. I had it all set up. What's going on with that? Now you can see the process. You can see the process now, right? So the idea being that sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you make mistakes, don't you? Sometimes you present something in a really good way and sometimes you don't. But the idea is that you give it your best and you leave God with the rest and you're open and willing to learn. That's true of me and it ought to be true of you. And if you're watching the show, I know it is. I know it is because you're the kind of person who's tuning in, right? Chilling with the crew, listening to different ideas, learning more about yourself, learning more about me and about you. And so we're grateful. Make sure to go over right now. Do not hesitate, in fact. Go over right now over to the Telegram chat, link in the description below, as well as the description to Our Lady's Closet. Okay? And we didn't say anything about it. I wish I would have. I'll remember next time. I might even take a little clip from the last episode that Jake did over at Meaning of Catholic, where he talks about it. He's got it on the screen. It's his wife. She has an Etsy store and makes really cool clothes. So you got to go check that out. That's in there. The SAINTMAKER's in there. Promo code's in there. A whole bunch of links, even to the master playlist here on this channel for all of Jake's work and all of mine. All in one place. So it's a one-stop shop. You don't need to go to Reason in Theology to find, and then to Meaning of Catholic and search through everything. No. Just go there. We update the playlist all the time. So you got to go check it out. A bunch of really good stuff. And you're always up to date, of course, if you're at the Wolfpack chat. So go check it out. And I'll be there in a couple minutes so we can talk later into the night. Pray for us, right? We're praying for you. And until next time, never give up. Keep on smiling. And memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.